G'day and welcome to another episode of Kiwi Car Life. And yes, this really is a Kiwi Car Life video. I, the reviewer of cheap crappy old Hondas and BMWs, am going to tell you what it's like to drive an Audi R8 V10 Plus. In a world full of showy Lamborghinis and pantomime Ferraris, the Audi R8 has always stood out as being the sensible supercar. The naturally aspirated engine and all-wheel drive make the immense power accessible, and the rather clinical German styling turns away many looking for a crowd-drawing car. But underneath, it bears the full brunt of Audi's research and racing DNA. It's got carbon ceramic brakes, double wishbone suspension, massive 20-inch wheels with Pilot Sport 4S tyres. It's a supercar alright, but one that toes the line between something built purely to set lap times and one that can genuinely be used every day. The engine, as many will be aware, is a 5.2 litre naturally aspirated V10. It makes 449 kilowatt or 610 horsepower and 520 newton meters, probably up there as the most powerful car I've ever reviewed. However, one nice thing about this is that while it makes an awful lot of power, because it is naturally aspirated in typical naturally aspirated engine fashion, if you put your foot down at 3000 RPM, probably only makes the power of a Golf GTI, which means that the power is very usable. You can control how much you're going to get with the RPM. Compared with, say, a McLaren or a Ferrari, which has a twin turbocharged V8, while they might make the same power, they make a lot more torque, and it all comes in at much lower RPM. Not to mention the fact that they are rear-wheel drive as well, which in conditions like today, which is definitely not ideal, I imagine they would be pretty terrifying to drive on a typical New Zealand back road. This, however, not only is it naturally aspirated, but it also has four-wheel drive, which, while rear biased, works effectively to put all 600 horsepower down to the road. And the Quattro all-wheel drive system and V10 engine are linked by probably the fastest shifting 7-speed dual clutch I've ever seen in my life. And finally, the interior. Surprisingly normal is how I would describe it. And in many ways it actually has less buttons and is less spaceship feeling than some other Audis because it doesn't have an infotainment screen. The only screen in the entire car is the gauge cluster. Naturally, it shows your 10,000 RPM tachometer with a digital speedo and a big gear readout. But interestingly, the infotainment system is the gauges. If you want to change the song that's playing or look at the navigation system, it's all done from the screen in the middle, which gives the rest of the interior room to show off its lovely carbon fiber trim, the beautifully stitched Napa leather and typical Audi brushed chrome trim everywhere. It's a lovely place to sit. The seats hold you in perfectly, but they're quite plush, they're quite comfortable. The steering wheel feels fantastic, but it's very easy to navigate your way around. You have a drive select button, a button to engage performance mode, and of course you also have the button to open up the valves on the exhaust. The climate control system isn't even dual zone. It's just a simple fan, temperature, and zone with heated seats. You have lovely tactile feeling buttons down here for the hazards, the parking sensors, even an auto start stop feature to help save fuel with your 5.2 litre V10, and overall, anyone could get into this interior and very quickly figure out where everything is. It's extremely logically laid out and is phenomenally well built. Driving the Audi R8 V10. Let's hear some V10 noises. My goodness gracious me, that is 600 horsepower if ever I've seen it. The transmission is arguably the most impressive thing. Yes, you expect the engine to make a hang of a lot of power, and it does, and it sounds absolutely incredible, especially with the Akrapovic exhaust, but the gearbox, bang, just flick it like as many times as you want. It just does exactly what you ask, and then up. I've never driven a transmission that changes gears that quickly. It doesn't even feel like there's any physical components moving. It is just instant. But the best part about it, and what sort of surprised me, is that you would think on a road like this, where I came up here in an Accord Euro R, it would just be totally unusable, right? A little 2-litre Honda is fun. You can wind it out to 9,000 RPM out of every corner. You're not going too quick. You'd think given this makes 3 times the power, it would just be unusable. But surprisingly, in the mid-range like this, I'm foot to the floor up there, and it's not absolutely blistering because it's naturally aspirated, but it has a very interesting power band where around sort of 3, 4, 5,000, you know, it goes pretty good, but it's certainly not blistering. But then when you hit, wow, 6,000 RPM, it's like it has VTEC almost. It literally like comes on cam, and without you changing your throttle position, you feel the power significantly increase. It's actually a very, very surreal sensation. And when you get it over that 5,500, 6,000 RPM range, then this thing is an absolute rocket. Of course, with the four-wheel drive, that's another part that I really like, is that you can always trust that it's going to put the power down. Despite the undulations in the road, and obviously less than ideal conditions today, it's still able to use all 600 horsepower that it has available at pretty much any opportunity. Straight out of the corner, foot down, and it just puts the power down flawlessly. You know, you would think a car with this level of power would be really intimidating to drive, but Audi has actually done a phenomenal job at making 600 horsepower easy, frankly. You wouldn't necessarily trust this with a 16-year-old, but if you've got some experience behind the wheel of a car, you can get in this and just have a whole lot of fun. And every driving characteristic of this car is absolutely faultless, as you would expect. Engine sounds amazing, response as soon as you put your foot down on the throttle. Transmission, as I mentioned, absolutely instant changes. I've never seen a gearbox which shifts that quickly. Steering feel, a little lighter than I expected, but it just communicates flawlessly as to what the car's doing. And genuinely, you would expect that a supercar would really only be usable on, you know, a motorway or just somewhere where you can go like 300 k's an hour. Well, no, I'm doing 40, and this thing sounds great, and you can put your foot down. Whoa, go up through the gears. One of the, I guess, reasons why I've never really considered or taken interest in anything like this and stuck to my rubbish old BMWs and Hondas is because obviously they're unattainable, but also I've always kind of seen supercars as just being a little bit single purpose, you know. Yeah, fantastic on track, I'm sure, and amazing for terrifying your passengers, but I mean, no one's really daily driving a supercar, are they? That's not what it's meant for. But with this, to my surprise, you can use it. So the Audi R8, absolutely phenomenal car. Heaps of fun to drive, as you would expect, but I guess the biggest surprise of all is that you can use this car every single day. It's comfortable, it's reliable, it's lovely to drive, it can be quiet, it can be loud, it can do absolutely everything. I would like to say that it's probably the best car I've ever driven, and it's certainly been an absolute privilege to get to drive something as phenomenal as this. And so with that, I will farewell you with the song of our people.